Welcome to today's webinar, Turbocharge Your Continuous Delivery in Less Than an Hour. My name is Mark Levy, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. I focus on product marketing here at OpsMx. A few housekeeping items. First, the session is about 50 minutes long. We're going to be recording the session. We'll send the recording and the slides to anyone who requests them. Ask any questions in chat, and we'll answer as many questions as we can. What I'd like to do first is, before we introduce Balaji, is go over and understand your level of experience with continuous delivery. So if you can, please take this poll. Just take a couple seconds. And while we're executing that, Balaji, if you could go to your slide, we'll introduce Balaji Siva. So Balaji is head of products here at OpsMx. And Balaji has had a lot of experience building large-scale cloud applications and products. Prior to OpsMx, Balaji worked at Cisco, where he was responsible for Cisco's cloud-native applications. Balaji, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mark. Nice to be here.
Great.
Thanks, everyone, for joining the call today.
Well, excellent. Why don't we go ahead and jump right in?
Excellent, thank you. So I think Mark introduced me. I've been with OpsMx actually over 4.5 years, working in the CD space in terms of working in Spinnaker community and overall intelligent CD features at OpsMx for 4 years. It's been a great journey, and I'll share with you in a second. We want to introduce OpsMx first for people who are new to OpsMx. We are a continuous delivery company. Our vision is to be able to deliver software without human intervention, to allow you to deliver software without human intervention. Obviously, to meet those, we have products that allow us to do that, both on-prem and in SaaS versions. So we have a OpsMx Intelligent Software Delivery Platform, ISD, which is basically available on-prem and SaaS, that provides you the full orchestration plus the intelligence layer. And if you just need the intelligence layer for your CD, any CD you have, then we have something called Autopilot, which is actually allows you the intelligence for CD. We have multiple large customers that is global and across many verticals, that you can see some of the logos at the bottom that have adopted us. And we would be happy to talk to you at the end of the call or during the call about your needs and how we can help you. So with that introductions away, I want to talk to you about how we look at continuous delivery and what problems are we solving. And at the end of it, we'll have obviously a demo to go through how you can turbocharge your continuous delivery in less than an hour through our SaaS offering. That's the main topic of this presentation. So one of the premises that we talked about earlier was our vision of delivering software without human intervention. Obviously, that is becoming more harder if you want to do it at scale, like thousands of releases, and at speed, hundreds of releases a day, for example. How do you do that at speed and scale is a challenge, particularly, for example, what you see here is a pipeline that goes from code commit to production. And you have multiple checkpoints along the way. You're deploying to multiple environments. You're doing multiple checks and balances before you do production. You maybe have to do a rollback if something were to go wrong. There's a lot of things that's happening in a typical CD flow, basically. But there are two major components of it. One is this velocity. How can I do faster? How do I do the deployment without, right now, many of you are probably using scripts or using Jenkins, some of the legacy tools. And so that is a challenge. And how do I deploy the multiple clouds? Because almost 100% of all the customers I talk to are deploying to one or more clouds. And to do that at speed and scale and to be able to roll back is a challenge. The other part is the risk. We talked about software delivery is not only automating the process, but also be able to do the things that humans do, which is verification, approvals, risk analysis, and security check. All of these things takes hours in a typical deployment process. And so when you're looking at a intelligent CD platform or just a CD platform, you have to really look at holistically how you want to solve your overall CD process problem uh, for really achieving the scale and the speed. Specifically, what is preventing you to get the velocity that you need? Many customers, Netflix, for example, deploy 1,000 times a day. That's not probably the scale that many people would eventually even get to. But there's a lot of things, even for smaller size customers, that prevent you from being able to get the velocity that you need. Some of the things could be like you're basically doing manual scripts, so scripts that you have to maintain um, uh, per release per software image or a service, for example, that is not easily replicable to other services. So you essentially are recreating some of those scripts and maintaining them. And if somebody leaves, that person who was maintaining them leaves, and it's a big problem for you to maintain them. You have many manual intervention process that we talked about that's really slowing down your release process. And if you are deploying to multiple clouds and you want to do, let's say, safe strategies like blue green or canary or rolling update, these things are actually, you have to craft it, and every release may have a different variations. Again, you are kind of creating another problem of the ability to add a new application. So one of the biggest things that's happening obviously is that you have applications that are broken down into microservices, and you have new services that are being spun up every so often, and you want to be able to bring the latest service and onto production quickly. And so these things are bottleneck. And you have to worry about managing this whole workflow end to end from code to production, and that is a challenge. And also, if you have multiple environments that you have to maintain, that you have to deploy to, based on maybe on-prem, some may be in public cloud, some may be behind a firewall. You need to figure out how to access these resources. These are challenges that act to prevent you from getting the velocity that you need. And what about risk? Because at the end of the day, you can go fast if you want to, for example, but then if you don't have the right guardrails or the right process in place, you're gonna have production failures, or you're gonna have security vulnerability, security risk, multiple other issues that could happen if you go at speed without the ability to minimize your risk. So things that causes the risk essentially is obviously the manual verification, uh, manual effort to verify releases and audit the releases. Uh, if you are doing manual verification, looking at logs and metrics and looking at other data points, there is potentially a possibility of mistakes. And not only it's time consuming, we talked about earlier, to reduce the velocity, but also you are error prone, and so it potentially increases the risk of your new release that's going into production. An audit, if you're trying to do audit, and it is obviously very difficult if you don't have the right process in place. And the audit, you're doing it maybe for security reasons, maybe for compliance reasons. There are multiple things you do, and if you do it incorrectly, you don't know why a particular release went where and why it happened. And those things are who can approve the release, who can deploy, who can approve a stage, for example, who can promote a release from one stage to next or to production. These things are increasing the risk. You need to be able to have good control over all of these things. And some of these activities can be automated or need to be automated. So compliance is a big requirement, both from the regulatory reasons as well as enterprise reasons. Some applications needs to have HIPAA or SOX compliance, etc. So you need to be able to enforce them, and that is basically, if you don't do that, obviously it increases the risk, and to be able to do it consistently or easily is a big challenge. So what we have is what OpsMx has is an intelligent software delivery platform. It uses the Spinnaker, which is an open source project from Netflix. If you haven't heard about it, it's a large community based open source project. Originally contributed by Netflix. Netflix still uses it internally to their 5,000, 10,000 deployments a day, for their streaming services. It was originally open source there, but then community contributed, including AWS, Google, Azure, and Opsomax, and other companies in the ecosystem, really uh, contributed and have a very vibrant community today. And Spinnaker by itself, open source project, has this ability to automate the workload, which is really increase the velocity. Has immediate built-in support for multi-cloud deployments like AWS and Azure. They themselves, the provider themselves, the AWS and Azure teams, actually added support for to Spinnaker to be able to deploy the VMs or containers or functions out of the box. And that means that you don't have to write any scripts to make it happen. The Spinnaker also includes safe deployment strategies like canary deployment or a blue-green deployment out of the box. And it is very scalable. Like I said, Netflix uses it. Salesforce, another large company, they used to deploy many more. Cisco is another large customer, and many more large customer deploying it at scale, thousands of applications, 10,000s of pipelines, and multiple deployments a day, or thousands of deployments a day. So there is definitely a scale, proven scale, and also it's extensible. So you're going to see some of the things that we have done at Opsomax is based on the extensibility of the base Spinnaker. We have been able to add, things like infrastructure as code support or database update support. So Snowflake update, SQL update, a lot of the things we have done, including the intelligence features, is based on the extensibility. And that means that you can also extend it if you like, if you have the ability or if you have the need. What we have done at Opsmax, we've taken that, obviously the awesome Spinnaker platform, and enhanced it further. So one of the things that has been challenging is the ease of operation. And today's session is actually covers some of that, which is that ability to use a SaaS instance of our platform, which is basically eliminates every operational challenges with Spinnaker or any other CD platform. So day zero, day one, day two operations is obviously a challenge for anything. And so we have solved that, we have enhanced that, and we have solved that either for even for on-prem, obviously for SaaS is fully eliminated. And one is the sort of the day zero problem or day one problem. Other is the ongoing self-service onboarding. And that's something we have really focused on. How do I take a new application and get onboarded instantaneously, right? You don't have to write another script. You don't have to write even a pipeline, and you don't have to check for compliance requirements. Everything is already pre-built, pre-available in a template that administrator can set, and you can actually get started. The developer can get started and almost instantaneously. You will be able to add anything he wants to in terms of even targets and accounts that you need to connect to by himself. And security is another big enhancement we have made. Security in terms of the platform itself, the ability to Spinnaker harden the Spinnaker layer, the open source layer, as well as enabled role-based access control and other kinds of things to make sure, and the vault integration, etc., to make sure the platform, what's happening is pretty secure. And last but not the least is around GitOps. GitOps basically is the ability to maintain the intended state of an application or the infrastructure, basically application in this case, in a Git repository, and then you have ability to maintain that in the Git, and then have the platform, in this case our ISC platform, Intelligent Software Platform, automatically update the state into the production clusters. So you say what you want in a GitOps style, and then we basically make sure that we run the pipeline to change or to increase scale up, scale down, or to update the version of the new software, etc. Right without you having to worry about it. Now, that's great. Like you have a great platform, we have a great day zero, day one, and all these operations. But really, like we talked about, two layers of problems. One is the velocity problem, other is the risk problem or the human part of the problem. So to solve the human part of the problem or the intelligence problem, we have multiple features, and I will show you in the demo. things that are an automated verification. How do I verify things in an automated fashion, like logs and metrics of a new release compared to an old release? How do I do policy and governance and security in an automated fashion, right? Things that this needs an SOX compliance check, or this needs a HIPAA compliance check, um, whatever the checks you have, or any other enterprise policy that things like you should not be releasing software middle of the day, or you only the approved artifact can be promoted to production, or only this group can do the approvals. Lots and lots of things you could configure and enable that allows you to achieve the compliance. The other is the automated approvals, which is another big feature. If you think about approvals in general, from QA to, let's say, staging and staging to production, people spend a lot of time trying to figure out, should I approve this release or not? And they may look at a lot of data to make the decision, and some of them are manually checked and multiple screens, etc. And then they have to still make a decision, and maybe inconsistent between one person and another person. And so we have essentially enabled automated way to do release approvals based on conditions that you have preset. And last but not the least is the whole observability. We have enhanced the observability of Spinnaker. Spinnaker itself provides a great way to observe what's going on, the pipeline stages and how it's updating, etc. And then deployed artifact. We have improved even further, right? Ability to look at multiple environments, ability to look at views across multiple accounts or target environments, many ways to look at data and understand what's going on. The other part is traceability. How do I trace why did the particular release or version got into production, for example? What was the image? What was the release? What are the commits that went in? Many things you can trace. And then from all the way from commit to an image tag to a deployed instance, you can trace all of them to allow you to really understand, given an image tag, where it's all running in production, or given a commit, which are the images running in production have that commit, which may be a bug or it may be a vulnerability, etc. Introduce a vulnerability, etc. So we can do a lot of those traceability and give you the full insights in terms of what's happening in your cluster, what's happening in your CD platform. So this is what the intelligent software delivery platform is. Um, and basically, in this particular webinar, I want to really say is that maintaining such a platform, not only just a Spinnaker itself or Jenkins, for example, any of those things you think about, just a CD platform, and that's definitely a day zero, day one, day two, a day n kind of things that you need to worry about. I mean, simple things like installation, upgrades, and monitoring, availability, onboarding new applications, security of the platform, and ability to integrate multiple tools. These are really challenges that any platform actually faces. And so we have really solved this set with something called OpsMx Intelligent Cloud. Basically, this is our SaaS offering. So we have this platform you saw before in the three-layer stack. So we have said, one of the challenges is obviously running it in your own environment. You take a lot of time to install, operate, and maintain, and upgrade, and all those things. So we wanted to relieve you of all the stress or all the activities in there. We want to basically provide you completely as a SaaS platform. So all you have to do is start using the product without worrying about how it's maintained, how it's scaled, how it's monitored, how its uptime is there. So our platform basically is an enterprise grade secure platform that is obviously set up in minutes. Once you make a request to us, we'll create an instance. Today, it's basically a per tenant deployment, meaning you are fully isolated from everybody else. It's highly secure. Nobody is sharing the instance with anybody else. So and then you can then do your self-service onboarding of applications. You can define everything else you want once we have set up the process. You can obviously enable highly secure role-based access control. And if you're deploying to on-prem cluster or you're deploying to public cloud, everything is secure. We have a model where we can deploy to on-prem through our secure agent, or if you're doing public cloud, we don't have to even share the keys of the public cloud with us. Everything is you can keep it locally to your public cloud, and we don't even need that key to be able to deploy to the public cloud. And we also allow you to connect to CI/CD tools, both sort of the SaaS versions, the tool chain that you need, both the SaaS version as well as even on-prem resources. If you have an on-prem Jenkins, for example, that is needed to pull the image from and deploy, we can do that. And we take care of all your high availability and DR architecture, that you don't have to worry about it. So we can get up to 4 nines, depending on your requirement in terms of availability. And all the features we talked about from an intelligence layer, they're all available right off the bat. So you can enable the risk assessment, the policy, the approval aspects, the observability aspects, everything that I talked about earlier as part of the platform is available for you in the OpsMx Cloud. So with that, I'm going to switch to a demo. By the way, you can go ahead and go to the URL that you see there, opsmx.com cloud free trial, opsmx-cloud-free trial to request an instance that you can actually start playing with it. It's a 15-day trial. I mean, obviously we can extend it if needed, and we'll be happy to walk you through it for a demo if you like. And if you want, go ahead and submit a request, and somebody will get back to you as soon as the webinar is over. All right. With that, let me switch my screen to the demo. In the meantime, if there's any questions, feel free to ask. And Mark, if you have any questions that come up, let me know. I can happy to answer the question.
Excellent. One is, and is this is available today? Is that correct?
That is right. That's right. Is that a question or are you asking?
It was a question.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, it is available today, and yes, you can use it. Let's. So if you go to that link and then request a SaaS setup for you, we will set up a SaaS instance for you. This is one of the instance. This is my, this is sort of our demo instance, obviously. But when you request, you will get a more you'll have some sample applications, but essentially you'll have fewer applications. I have obviously 86 applications, but you'll get like 4 or 5 applications, and then you will be able to start creating your own instances. So what would you do? Let's say you get this platform as part of the trial, and what would you do to enable it going? So everything else will be set up for you. The Spinnaker, that's part of the SaaS platform, is already set up for you. So all you have to do then is do your integrations. So basically, integrations could be your Jenkins server or a Slack notification. So you would just create a new integration from available options. So you can set up your Artifactory, you can maybe a GitHub, or you can set up accounts right from here, and then you'll be able to connect your Jenkins, for example. Different tools you can connect right from here as a starting point, and before you can sort of create your first pipeline. So once you've done this tools integration, then you can go to cloud provider that allows you to connect to a Kubernetes cluster or AWS or any of those things. So you can go and create a new account where you can say, I want to connect to any of these accounts available. So if you say something is missing or whatnot, let us know. We will make it available for you. Right now, I can add a Kubernetes account, AWS account, etc. And if you're if anything you provide, we will store in our vault secrets, and we can also avoid giving that by using our agent concept. So agent is this remote agent that you run in your VPC or in your Kubernetes cluster, and that basically allows us to reach out to. You don't need to provide us access to the. You don't need to provide us the keys, but we'll be able to still be able to deploy based on the agent, which is basically a pod that you would deploy from us. You can add a new agent, for example, and download the pod specification, and then deploy in your cluster. Once you've done that, then you can connect to that deployment target through this agent. So in this case, I have a couple of agents running. One is basically you can see there are 3 Kubernetes clusters that are behind it, and that we are accessing from this agent. And you can also connect to a Jenkins, as I said before. If there's an on-prem Jenkins you have, then you can actually connect to the on-prem Jenkins through the agent. So now that you have set up the target environment, either through an agent or directly, and you have set up the integrations, now you can define the applications. So for defining applications, you can click here, and you have access straight to the Spinnaker application. You can then it's basically creating applications right here, right? You can create an application, specify what you need to specify, and everything else will be synced back to us, and then you'll be able to start creating pipelines. For example, in this case, I can go here, I can create a pipeline. In this case, there's a simple pipeline here where I'm taking a manifest file, I'm taking a file and deploying that manifest to an account. An account essentially is the target Kubernetes cluster in this case. Obviously, you can deploy VPC VMs as well. EC2, for example, but in this case, it's a Kubernetes namespace or a Kubernetes cluster that you have. And for example, I can have an AKS versus EKS and local anything. So it's basically, if I want to switch to IBM cloud, to a EKS cloud, AKS cloud, it's just a matter of just changing this pull down option. And that's really the amazing part of what we have here, is that your exact file, the manifest is exactly the same. But then let's say I'm going from my local cluster to AKS or AKS, IBM, I don't have to do any change to anything. I've obviously added those accounts in the setup page, but once I've done that adding the account, after that, it's just a matter of just drag and drop, and you're good to go. So that sort of shows you the easiness of it. Obviously, you can modify these pipelines. This is basically a Spinnaker. And in this case, I'm not allowed to edit it because I'm using a templated pipeline. This is actually a beautiful way to control your developers from making changes, right? So one of the, if you obviously you can, you can create any sort of pipelines, but if you have people create pipelines, they may make mistakes, and then you would have to troubleshoot those things, and people have problems. So the best way to avoid that is that you say, what, if you want to deploy the Kubernetes cluster, here's a sample pipeline, here's a template pipeline that you can use to start deploying it. All they have to do is they can just clone a new pipeline, right? And then essentially I can go here and then create a new pipeline. Let's create a new pipeline, and then base it on this pipeline. It's a copy from test, right? Or in this case, or a template. And the template could be anything that we have. Again, these are all different things you could do that allows you to. There's some stack area, but basically you'll be able to select from a template as well, right? So you can. I actually created that pipeline before this call from a template, right? So you can do the same thing, where I selected from an existing Kubernetes template and a deployment template, and it is available. Let's assume that you have created the pipeline, you've set up your targets, you've set up your accounts, and now it's running, everything is running. Now you have this view where you have an application dashboard that shows you what are the different types of applications that you've enabled and what's running and what's happening for that particular application. So let's take this example here, this OpsMx demo application. There's really one service on this application. It could be over multiple pipelines, right? So it's not a pipeline, it's actually a service. So it could be 3 pipelines or 4 pipelines that make up the service, but essentially from your point of view, just one service. So you can look at, where is this particular application is deployed. So you can see that it is deployed over 3 environments. 3 environments is like a dev cluster, a QA cluster, and a prod cluster, right? And it is deployed over 18 times. And you can see there are different versions that are deployed. This .15 is deployed in dev, 14.2 is still running in QA, and the production is also 14.2. This is basically an application level view. If you have multiple services, you would see multiple entries here, but this is only one service right now, so you would see only one. But I can drill down if there's multiple services or one service. I can drill down at a service level view. This is basically this single service that, that view where you can see that everything in one currently deployed versions as well as the past versions. So this is useful because you can go and say, how did this particular version went into production? So I can click here and I see how it got here. For example, this particular version has these two commits that are part of the release, part of this update. So for example, I can click here and I look at what code change went in. So this is useful, for example, if I'm approving this release to a different, if I'm approving it, it's really nice to see what are the code check-in that went in as part of this release. You want to go to a Jira ticket, if there are any Jira tickets, maybe for an issue or for a QA test or whatever, I can click here and straight go to the Jira and see what's happening to the Jira ticket. And this is useful because if you're trying to understand if all the Jira tickets are closed or if everything is done right, if it's been approved, etc., you can really look at it really quick. You can go to SonarQube if you have it. You can connect to any number of data sources. Obviously, in this particular case, this pipeline has these data sources, but we have enabled access to any data sources that you may have. Twistlog, Aquasec, anything you can think of. You want to integrate SASD, DASD, CI tools, Bamboo, Jenkins, anything you want to have. In this case, I'm going to Jenkins, right? Um, Anything you have, you can connect to it, and then you'll be able to, connect to it. So now with the new release that's coming out this week, actually, we have enabled the ability to bring in your own data sources without even talking to us. So till today, we had already done many integrations, but you still depend on us. Starting today, you will be able to, bring your own data source and connect to it and be able to use it as part of your tracking process. Now, this data is available even for the past releases. And this is very useful from a traceability point of view. You can go look at it. What was this release? Why was it released in the first place? What are the different things that went in this particular release in the past? And this is very useful, not only from today's problem, which is what is running today, to what happened in the past. And this is useful. All the information that you see here will be preserved and available for you to look at. There's also policy checks. There's policy checks that was done as part of these policy gates. In this case, the same gate, but you could have different policy gates that allows you to see what happened, and you can see what the actions of that policy is. It was allowed or denied. And then you can also look at the verification, which is basically the automated verification. In this case, it's success is 100%. The score is under it. That means it's really good. It's all success, but you can also have failures. So this gives you a view of how you can quickly drill down application or services across environments and see how it got there, what went into the particular release, everything in one single click, a couple of clicks, basically. So that's that. Let me get into this thing, intelligence feature called the verification. And this is useful because this shows the strength of our product, right? I'm going to talk about this particular failed release. And you can see the score is 0, which basically means it's a failed release. And I want to understand what happened here. So here I can look at, I can analyze logs and metrics and even correlate all of them together. I can figure out what are the net new problems in the log messages. By the way, if you look at this particular output, there are 7,000 lines of logs in the new release and basically 6,000 in the old release. By the way, this data is stored from Elasticsearch in this case. So this data can be, you can look at the actual data as well if you like. But we have looked through the new release and new logs and really understood that there's only 10 seconds we took for the analysis. Right? That's pretty amazing. If you think about it, I give you a 7,000 line log message of a new release and then say, go figure out whether this is a new problem or old problem or whatnot. I'm sure you're going to take more than 10 seconds. And not only that, you're going to be error prone every time you try to do that. Not you may be able to do it, but maybe somebody else in your team cannot do it because they don't understand the context of it. So what we've done is we've taken the context of the past baseline release and really ferreted out what is a net new issue that you need to worry about really. So in this case, there's only 2 issues, even though there are 7,000 lines of messages, there's only 2 net new issues. One is what we call, this particular case is an error message, that happened 33 times in the new release and 0 times in the baseline version. And that's useful. If you want to look at the actual, all the messages, you can click on these links and understand what is baseline and what is an expected. Basically means that it's repeating in both the baseline and the new version. So that's not really a problem. If there's an error that's happening over and over again across all your releases, well, that's expected apparently, right? Because you're already in production. But if there are new errors that are happening in a new release, that's not expected. That's the unexpected part. So we automatically use NLP machine learning to categorize these issues. In this case, we have categorized error for obvious reasons, but it could be even be more subtle. And you can tell exactly how do you want to do a classification. You can specify, hey, it's really not an error, it's a critical error. And you don't have to do it while after it ran, after it did the analysis. You can do a preset data as well. So basically, we learn over time, and then you provide input over time, and then eventually we have the new model, and you can actually use a new model, the learned model, to a new release that's coming out. That way they don't have to start from scratch. They already learned everything. And not only you can understand what the errors are, you can actually categorize them. So next time somebody runs into it, they don't have to worry about what is the diagnosis of this problem. Oh, they look at this and say, oh, this is a data error. Okay, I got it. Or something meaningful to you, right? Network error, for example, or something meaningful to you, whatever the errors that make sense to you. So this really helps you to not only triage the problem quickly, instantaneously in this case, but also be able to diagnose a problem for not only for you, but for others in your team. And you could share this with others. That way they can see, okay, I see this error. Let me go figure out what's the bug in there. You can also we also do metric analysis, which is basically at the same time we did the log analysis, we did the metric analysis and looked at how is the application performing in terms of various metrics. So again, you can use the neural networks, machine learning based approach to figure out what are the relevant weights of these metrics, and so you can score it properly. In this case, we have a critical metric that fails, so that's why the score went to 0. But in many cases, if the critical metrics do not fail, so in that case, you would have a different score, basically, maybe a 70 or something. But then how do we come with 70 is because of neural networks, and we can kind of identify the weights for it. So in this particular case, you can clearly see that the new release, the latency for this great latent API is much higher than the baseline, and that's really a problem, right? And so that's why we failed this particular release. And you can do correlation in the sense that, when does the error message happen in the log, and when does it happen in the metric? So you can see that there are some things that are happening in the 7 to 15-minute range, and you can see that the errors are also the latency also has been a little shaky during the time. So they kind of understand if there's any correlation or is a different problem that you need to troubleshoot. And that's just one use case. Now let me show you another example where it's even more interesting. So I'm going to show you something called contextual issue. Here there's no failure, as you can see, it's a success, 93. But this is an interesting use case because this particular error message, whatever this message is, no service found from any supplier. We categorize the errors. Now, because somebody told us it's an error, so this assumes an error. But the interesting thing is not that how many times it happened in the new and the old. That's one part of the problem, that it happened many times. But also it happened across multiple contexts. So we already do the contextual thing for you. So for example, that message 19 times, but it's actually spread over 4 different contexts. So what is a context? 12 times in this context, 1 time, 5 times, 1 time in different context. So what is the context? It's basically how the error message happens along with the neighboring messages. Sometimes the error messages may be contextual in the sense that because of this particular database error in this case, like somebody has tagged database errors, because of database error, this message happened, or it happened during the database error. Or maybe there's an email server error and this message, same thing happened. So you're trying to troubleshoot or bug fix this particular issue. If you had just looked at one of the contexts and say, oh yeah, it looks like a database problem, and then you would have missed the other issues along with the same error message and the same output. So we have essentially done is allowed you to really diagnose this thing much better, understand the context much better. That's why it's really powerful tool, verification tool. We have in the next upcoming release, we're going to do a security analysis as well. So where we're going to be able to see and some of the security risks in the logs and metrics, everything else as part of it. So it's a very, very a powerful tool. And we can do multi-service analysis as well. So if you have multi-service, let's say you're deploying a Helm chart, multi-service deployment, not just one service, you can look at, let's say this one. There are multiple services here, like let's say 4 services here, and but only one failed, right? The obviously you know which one failed, right? The database dashboard, I'm sorry, has failed, but the other services are fine. So when you're going to roll back this bad deployment, right, you're going to say, oh, this is something is not working. You need to know which one of the 4 services actually failed. So this clearly gives you an idea of a clear understanding. Okay, dashboard is the one which has a problem. Everything else is fine. So you go troubleshoot dashboard, for example. That's very useful. And not only we do during the canary or blue green or production use cases, we also do tests during tests. And this is actually very interesting too, because if you look at if you look at this use case, this is actually a test suite. There are 25 test cases in the test suite. Right? If you look at the total test cases, 20. So this is during the what do you call a QA phase, right? Not during the deploy phase or the production deploy phase. During the QA phase, while you're running this QA test, we say there are 25 test cases, and we have analyzed each one of them and say, okay, which of the test cases, not all of them have failed, maybe some have failed, but you can look at the failed test case only, right? In this case, all of them are failed, right? But you could say success with 25 and only 2 failed, for example. That's really useful for you because now you can say that, okay, only that test case has some issues that you want to troubleshoot. And this is how we can really help you. You can shift left your verification to test scenarios. That way you can find these issues even before you have to go to canary or blue green to the failure analysis. And this helps you to stop the particular version right here, and then troubleshoot it, and we can help you with that. We have one customer who has thousands of test cases, and he doesn't even bother to look at these things because it's time consuming. You can imagine 1,000 test cases, 1,000 lines of logs per test case. You're looking at humongous amount of information, and there's no way for the person to really troubleshoot all of them. So that's really how we can come up and say, you know what, you ran 1,000 test cases, only 5 of them really fail. That's really helpful, right? And that you can take the time to diagnose. That's the verification feature. We also have, we already talked about the approval feature, which is basically ability to look at different sources of data while you're approving. If it's still active, in this case, it's already approved. But if it's active, you'll see a button called yes or no, which basically tells you it's approve or not. I mean, approve or reject. But you can look at the data before you can approve this thing. In this case, you can specify which approver groups have access to this, and they can also put some notes in there. You can actually chain the approvals so that you can have multiple people approve it and look at it, but they can all look at the same data. They'll come in and say, okay, these are the code check-in went in, this is a Jenkins build, this is a Sonar Cube. All of them is available for them to look at and approve at the same time from a chaining perspective. Next feature I want to talk about is the ability to do policy management. We talked about policy for compliance or for other reasons. You have an extensible policy model that allows you to create policy through the Rego policy engine, the Rego policy language. Through the backend implementation is through the OPA, which is Open Policy Agent, which is an open source project. But essentially, we allow you to have policy management. We have ability to implement or enforce policy statically, which means that when nothing is going on, it's not during the runtime of the application or the pipeline, it's through other time. For example, if you have a rule that says that you have to have a judgment stage or a manual gate before you go to a production deployment, then we can enforce that. People cannot even change the pipeline. If they try to change the pipeline and delete something. Okay, let's say you need a sonar cube for every pipeline, and then somebody says, I don't want to do sonar cube. No, you can't do that. So we can have these kind of policies that are running all the time in the system and enforce them along the way. So the people in your company are not developers, are not changing things they're not supposed to change. But you also have runtime verification as well. Like you can say blackout window enforcement. So the pipeline is running. Somebody has a authority to approve, authority to deploy the application, but then you have a business policy that they cannot deploy during the blackout window. So we have ability to control that. There's so many options to knobs you can enable, on this particular policy. We're gonna have, shortly ability to have one-click SOX compliance, one-click HIPAA compliant policies, everything available out of the box for you. So you can specify this particular application has this requirement, so let me apply. Obviously, you can define your own policy in your internally, and you can apply the policy to your application. And a couple of more things I want to point out is the full audit capability. So you can look at any application at any point in time and what happened at the particular day. So you can look at, who deployed, what they deployed, when they deployed. You have all the data available, so you can specify any kind of information that you want for the particular application, for the pipeline, and be able to go troubleshoot that. If you want to look at why did this particular, you can see that this failed, so I can click here and I go to the Spinnaker and see that particular failed pipeline run, right? So you can see that something happened here, and you can look at the logs. So you can do all of those right from here, right from the one page. So everything that's happened, you have access to in the audit trail. So you can also audit the policy that happens. You can look at this particular policy application, try to access the policy, and it was allowed or denied. Information is available. And we also have one last thing. I'm sorry. So we also have insights. So you can look at your deployment sort of frequency, how many deployments happen, most successful, most active pipeline, most failed pipelines, fastest, slowest pipelines. And you can customize these outputs and essentially get like a DORA metrics, for example. You can do that. That really gives you an idea of for the administrator or for the manager, what's happening to any to your CD platform, right? All of these are available as part of this platform. And I want to go back to the presentation here. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. You do have the ability to ask for a trial of the version. And let's pause here for a second, Mark, and maybe you can bring up any questions that was asked.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Balaji. Really, it's amazing. One thing I think was an interesting point that we should bring up is, the SaaS version of our intelligent software delivery platform. It's hosted and use Spinnaker as our deployment platform, and we host that in OpsMx, and which OpsMx is Spinnaker experts, right? So the team that's hosting that version, upgrading it, we're major contributors to the open source community and experts in Spinnaker itself, which is really a lot of added value, right?
Yep. So I view this the Intelligent Cloud as hosting the whole thing, like the whole Intelligent CD part of it. Yeah, Spinnaker definitely is a big part of what we do, and it's a key part of what we do, and definitely the expertise. And from your point of view, we are guaranteeing an SLA of 3 nines or 4 nines, depending on what you need, and you don't have to worry about the platform itself, and you can come and do what I was doing. Just add accounts, add targets, and start creating pipelines and deploying pipelines, and all. That's all you have to do. You don't have to ever worry about whether to upgrade, downgrade. We will take care of all of that. Day zero problems. We also have ability to provide you support in terms of guidance, in terms of how to create pipelines or how to create these templates, how to create these policies, etc., how to create these verification systems, once you're able to get to the basics. And this is useful because that's how you start really accelerating your software delivery. Like I talked about, the orchestration is just the one layer of the problem. The rest of the stuff is what makes it interesting to really solve the no human intervention in software delivery.
Well, great. Well, really appreciate it, Balaji. There's no further questions. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out today and attending this webinar. Again, 15 day free trial available on our website. And again, thank you, Balaji, and thanks everybody for attending. Have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Mark.